Hello, everybody. Those of us who are at the hall at Shaganapi and online, welcome, welcome. My name is Alan Donsky. I'm part of the team that started up Wellness Through Mindfulness, WTM. We're coming up on our 8th year, and it's a pleasure to be the moderator this evening. I'm going to just spend a few minutes doing some housekeeping, and then it'll be my pleasure to introduce our speaker for tonight, and then I'll give you details of that in a little bit. For those of you who are relatively new, you may have know or don't know, but revision is always good, that we have two websites that you can access: thebreathproject.com, wtm.thebreathproject.com, www.thebreathproject.org. I'm sorry, they're both .org. We are a not-for-profit. Our speakers aren't paid. None of the moderators or the leadership team are paid for any of this. We do, however, have ongoing expenses to pay for the hall here at Shaganapi and for our webmaster, who does a great job of keeping everything up to date. And so for those of us live here, if you happen to have a little blue or purple note or even a couple of coins in your pocket, there is a basket up front. And if you don't have, you can always make a small donation on the website. It keeps things going for us here. We meet every 2 weeks. We're going to be doing hybrid for the foreseeable future and evaluate how things go, the popularity of live versus online. In 2 weeks' time, I'm going to be talking about mindful listening, and that's going to be paying attention to the silence of the heart. And 2 weeks after that, Leslie Ellistat is going to be giving the first of a two-part series on deepening your mindfulness practice. And announcements and so forth are all on the website. We do have a disclaimer, and out of interest for confidentiality purposes, for the fact that some of this is being recorded in a fashion, we ask that any questions or reflections relate to the content of the material of the evening in questions. This programming that we put on is really meant for educational purposes, for growing mindful practice, etc. This is not a group therapy session, and we just ask that people be aware of that, this isn't a group therapy session. And we've had occasion, while people may have important questions about their practice and how it pertains to their personal life, the main reason is that other people in the room might be triggered by the question, or other people might find it uncomfortable to be in the presence when they weren't aware people may be disclosing something too much. So just as a courtesy to the group as a whole. This evening, I have a pleasure to introduce Pam Hauck, who's been attended here before. Pam on my left, and I'll move the screen over to Pam in a couple of minutes. Pam is one of those people who's really integrated her Western traditions with Eastern. And her path has been an interesting one, because Pam has not only got an MBA, but she's also done a master's in counseling through Gonzaga University. She is a Canadian certified counselor. She's a CCC. And then Pam has also done extensive personal work at the feet of great teachers. She's done a 2-year training with two people in particular in the States who are very well known in the mindfulness community. That's Jack Cornfield and Tara Brach. She's done a 2-year program, so she's actually a mindfulness meditation certified teacher. She's got a certificate. And she has also then taken all of this and integrated it, but gone further with it. So she's combined what was a traditionally Western therapy, which is cognitive therapy. About 15, 18 years ago, a lot of research started up to introduce mindfulness and combine it. And there has been a third wave of therapy called Mindfulness Based Cognitive Therapy, MBCT. And that's the core topic for this evening that Pam's going to be talking about. Pam is also an MBSR teacher. This mindfulness-based stress reduction, and that's been around since 1979, and also certified teacher in that. Pam offers work. You can find more about her. There's cards at the front if you wish. Online, Pam Hauck. Put in her name and her website will come up. Pam does online group work, MBSR, MBCT. Pam does live work, and more interestingly, because of the COVID crisis in the last couple of years, Alberta Health and the government dedicated over $50 million. I can't remember exactly when that was, probably a year plus ago. And Pam has been recruited to provide MBCT for Albertans. And Pam was, for her services and the excellence of her teaching and stuff, she is part of the services that AHS has recognized. And so we're very honored to have Pam here this evening to help us. Pam's going to do a meditation at the beginning to just help us settle in, drop in a little bit, orient ourselves inwards to what this is all about. We will probably, Pam will wrap up close to 8 o'clock. We will have half an hour of Q&A. I will make a point and remind myself to attend to any questions online live, and you can put your hands up or you can enter a question in the chat room. I will repeat the questions for people online, and then I will come to the live audience here at Chaganapi for ongoing questions and answers or comments and reflections. Have I left anything out for? He can be taught. I'm a slow learner, but I can be taught. So Pam, thank you very much for, and I'll slide the table across to you. And thank you very much for supporting our programming.
Hi everyone, online and in person. So let's take a moment and have a slight, a few minutes of stillness together before we get into my talk. Inviting you to close your eyes or take a soft gaze in front of you. Bring your internal awareness to your posture, perhaps noticing your shoulders dropping, your face, bringing awareness to your brow and your jaw, allowing them to relax. And as we move down to the bottom of your body, your feet grounded on this earth, recognizing those who have come before us, acknowledging the lands of those present in the Calgary region, but also those online. And as we do that, bringing an awareness to all those who have come before us, today and after us, in a sense of gratitude and recognition. And now intentionally bring your awareness to your breath, to the movement and the sensations in your body of your breath. To that area in your body where you can notice the inhalation, the air coming into your body, and the exhalation as the air leaves your body. And rather than thinking of breathing, let's move our awareness to the actual sensation in the body of the breath. And that can be at the belly, your abdomen moving in and out, or the chest region, noticing your rib cage expanding or deflating. Could even be the sound of your breath. And for me, I notice the breath most vividly near my nostril, the upper lip area. Noticing the cool temperature of the air entering the body, tickling my nostril. And then as the air leaves my body, noticing a slightly warmer temperature. And wherever you notice the movement and the sensation of the breath most vividly for you, reside here. With the full inhalation and the full exhalation. And you may notice that your attention has been drawn to a sound in the room or a thought in your mind. And this is perfectly normal. And in our practice, it is helpful to acknowledge and recognize that the mind has wandered, noting that this is just as much of the practice as noticing the breath entering and leaving your body. So when you do notice that the mind has wandered into thinking or into sounds, gently notice that and come back to the breath. Residing in the body where the breath is most prominent for you. And we use the breath as our anchor into the present moment. Recognizing that each breath is a new breath. And the breath is life. And now I'll ask you to bring your attention back the awareness in this room or online as we end this short practice. Inviting you to open your eyes when you feel ready. And we'll begin our conversation on mindfulness-based stress reduction and mindfulness-based cognitive behavior therapy. So as Alan has graciously introduced me and my background, I'm an active therapist and counselor doing therapy online and in person, and my gracious offering of the mindfulness cognitive therapy is my foundation to my work. So I'm going to start with mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which is really a combination of mindfulness and CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So maybe what I'll do to start with is just maybe give you an overview of the program. And then what I'd like to do is actually do a practice or an exercise together so we can experientially actually get an appreciation for what the program is about. So I'll start with the framework. It is an 8-week program, 8-week group program, where we're meeting weekly in person and online. So you can do it either virtually or in person for 2 and sometimes 2.5 hours session weekly. So it's an intense program where 2.5 hours is a fairly lengthy practice. We do break the practice in half. So the first hour or so is the meditation mindfulness practice that we do in class together. And then we talk about what's showing up with that practice. And then the second half of the class is a psychoeducational component of how we integrate the mindfulness into our day-to-day experience. So we look at bringing mindfulness as a tool with what's showing up for us in our challenges and in our suffering with life. So as I speak to that, what's coming to mind for me is, why was this program initiated? Why did it come to be? And so I think I need to go back a little ways to explain the MBSR program, the mindfulness-based stress reduction, which was in essence originated in 1979 with John Kabat-Zinn when he was working as a medical doctor with chronic pain. And when he introduced this program, he started to become pleasantly surprised that mindfulness can be a tool to use in our relationship with pain, that we can actually move out from the physical sensations of the pain to actually have a different relationship to the pain. And then it evolved into working with stress and stress reduction. So that was how many centuries, well, decades, 4 decades maybe ago. And then about 15 years ago, we have three doctors, Zindel Siegel, Mark Williams, and John Tisdale. So here's the book. I don't know if you can see that online. It's a little bit blurry, but it's mindfulness-based cognitive therapy for depression. So I want to speak to this because originally MBCT was originated for preventing relapse of depression. So those, if you may be aware of depression, once you have experienced a bout of depression, you're more likely to go back into depression. Many times, 2 or 3 relapses. And then typically what you'll notice is that these subsequent relapses will get deeper and perhaps lengthier. So what these 3 individuals discovered is when they put together this program, which was basically a branch out of MBSR, to address those individuals that have suffered with depression in the past, bringing this program into their life can prevent relapse of depression in the future. So they found quite a bit of success, and so much so that it was introduced in the UK into their national health program as a way to work with depression. It has now evolved into working with other mental illnesses as well, so anxiety, stress, and other mental health disorders. So when I'm teaching this program, we're primarily working with depression and anxiety. And I think I need to highlight that because it's not a practice of, say, self-compassion or loving kindness. This is a practice on working with rumination, the thinking mind that is being trapped in rumination or worry, or anxiety or panic attacks that are coming on, how we can relate and work with those types of mental conditions. So over the course of these 8 weeks, what's happening is we're building on, each week becomes a succession of the weeks building on each other. So the first weeks we're working on the mind as a scattered entity. Whoops, I put that out. I'm just gonna bring up the weekly program here. So the first week is awareness and automated pilot. So we are working with bringing awareness into our being. And then the second week is living in our heads. The third week is gathering the scattered mind. So a lot of recognizing the cognitive and thinking mind. And then the fourth week, we are working with aversion, recognizing aversion. So this is really important because we talk about those things that we don't want. So we don't want depression in our life, or we don't want anxiety to show up, right? So we want to recognize when that's present, and then how to have a different relationship of letting the mindfulness strategies of allowing that to be present. And then following that is session week 5, which is allowing and letting be. Session 6 is thoughts are not facts. So you may have heard of that before, that thoughts are they're reality, but they're not necessarily true. Then we go into how do we best take care of ourselves. And the 8th week is endings are beginnings. So what I thought I would do is, I thought I would actually do a practice with us today. So we have an idea of what this mindfulness and cognitive behavioral therapy, how they can come together. So if I can ask you to perhaps get into a comfortable position again, we're going to do a little practice or exercise. And if possible, close your eyes. I'm going to actually bring forward a situation, a story, and then ask you about it afterwards. So you are walking down the street, and on the one side of the street, walking towards you, you see someone you know. You smile and you wave to them. The person doesn't seem to notice and walks right on by. So I'll say that again. You're walking down the street, and on the other side of the street, you see someone you know. You smile and you wave. The other person doesn't seem to notice and walks on by. So as we come back to the room, I want you to reflect on what are the thoughts that are coming up for you in this situation. So just think of some of the thoughts that are arising. And then I'm going to ask you, what are the emotions that came up for you? And lastly, were you aware of any body sensations? And then the last thing I would ask you are, what were your impulses or your behaviors to act? So I'm graciously going to invite anyone that would like to participate to share, because it's helpful to bring our group together, but only if you feel comfortable and safe. And if not, I will share my own experience. I have Barb has her hand up. Maybe I'll ask her to unmute. Is that right? Oh, there. Okay, Barb.
Hi.
Hi. So this is someone online. Okay, so what were the thoughts coming up for you, Barb?
I would have wondered if they were okay. I would have thought, I wonder, what could be wrong?
Okay, thank you. So wondering, are they okay or is this something wrong? And did you have an emotion?
Curiosity.
Curiosity. Okay, anything else?
No, that would be the main
Okay.
one.
Okay, and anything showing up for you in your body?
No,
No? Okay. And did you have an impulse to act?
I would either call out or potentially go across the street and engage them.
Okay, so the impulse was either to call out, to yell at them, or cross the street and to talk to them. Thanks, Barb.
You're welcome.
Okay, is there anyone in person that would like to share? Yes.
I just feel uncomfortable when that happens.
Okay.
I just feel uncomfortable. It's just like, and yeah, my body, I feel different, weird. I feel weird inside.
Okay.
Like something's wrong.
Right. And do you know where in your body you would feel that?
Describe it. I don't know. I think I probably quit breathing for a bit.
Okay, so maybe some shorter breaths, or maybe.
But yeah, I feel weird. I feel uncomfortable. I just it's not the way back situation you don't know what's going on.
So can I ask you, what would have been the thoughts that were showing up for you?
I don't know what to think. That's the problem. What's going on here?
Yeah, what's going on? Like unsure of what's happening.
That could be maybe the guy is upset with me the last time I talked to him, or who knows, could be a million things. But just maybe the guy's just daydreaming to notice. I don't know.
Yeah, a bit of uncertainty maybe.
Yeah, I don't know what to think. I don't know.
And then lastly, what would have been your impulse to act?
My impulse is to do something and the situation more uncomfortable, more awkward. Whereas, and then I reflect later, I go, you should just get on one, you know.
Right.
So-
Okay. Okay. So maybe something that was going to exaggerate the uncomfortableness.
Yeah, an awkward guy. Hey, what's going on or something or whatever, you know. So
Mhm.
I don't know how to handle that situation, to be honest.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Okay, and then we have Len. Are you?
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Hi. I would, my first thought right away is I would be hurt by that. That
Yes.
would be my first thought right away is how come he didn't acknowledge me?
Yes. Okay, so the thought of why did he not acknowledge me?
Yes,
And
right away.
the
That's what I would think.
the emotion is hurt.
Yes, and maybe a little bit of anger. Definitely sadness. Wondering why he didn't acknowledge me. Is it something I did or did in the past? I would be curious about that too.
Yeah, yes. Thank you. And any sensations in your body?
With the exercise, you mean, or
When you would have noticed that there was no response from the individual and you were feeling maybe hurt, sadness, was there any sensations showing up in your body at that point?
I would think probably some anger,
Mm-hmm.
some anger.
So anger is an emotion. What about body sensations? Anything, for example, were you feeling tight or
Yeah, probably a little tensed up.
Mhm.
Yes. Probably my body would tense up a little bit, become a little bit more rigid, maybe, things like
Yeah.
that.
Okay. And impulse to act?
I would at that moment, I would probably have an impulse to maybe wave again or communicate with them.
Okay.
You know, instead of just waving, maybe say hello or something like that.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So taking some initiative there. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Len. Okay. So maybe we'll stop there. This exercise is what I would call parceling out our experience. So you might have noticed that we have our cognitive thinking mind coming up and thinking, why didn't they notice me? Why did they just walk by? Or maybe they were daydreaming and just didn't see me. And then there was the emotions, and different people had different emotions. Maybe there was hurt or sadness. The body could have been showing some tightness and different behaviors. So this is the cognitive, what we call the cognitive behavioral triangle. And I'm not sure if you can see this online. That's not so good. But basically what happens is you have a situation, and I'll be honest, we can pass that around too. The situation is basically benign. We are not
It
involved.
works if you hold it next to yourself. Don't hold it next to the camera, hold it next to yourself. Yes, perfect.
Okay. I'm gonna hold it here. Okay, so we have a situation that a gentleman or a lady or a person is walking across the street. We have no idea what's going on for them. We are experiencing our own emotions and behaviors and thinking pattern based on our own perception. And we all have different perceptions, right? And when we change our perception, maybe there's a different awareness showing up for us. So what we're learning in this class is shifting our perception, opening up our awareness so that we can become aware of everything that is in our environment, externally and internally. And typically what we do is individually, we take things personally, right? Why didn't they wave to me, right? It's about me, but maybe they had something else going on. So what we want to do is recognize our own thinking patterns and how our thinking influences our emotions and also show up in our body. And then that determines how we respond. So how does this all relate to mindfulness? Can you unblur the background? Okay, we're working on that. How can we relate this to mindfulness? So we're actually going to do another exercise, and it's only about 4 or 5 minutes, okay? So if you're, okay, so if you're with me, let's practice another exercise. And if I can put you on alert, this is the foundational exercise strategy for this program. So I'm going to be going through this experientially with you, and I'll show you how we can use it. So let's get into a mindfulness state and posture. And as I tell my students, the very first phase of any practice is our posture. So we'd like to be alert and comfortable. So this practice I'm going to teach you is actually in 3 steps, and it's very simple. And each step is aligned to 1 minute. So it's basically a 3-minute practice. And the purpose of this practice is to step out of automated pilot. So right now, in this very first stage, I'm going to ask you to bring awareness to what is showing up for you in your thinking mind. What are your thoughts at this very moment? And not wanting to do anything with those thoughts, just to recognize what is present. And now, let's turn to your emotions. What are the emotions that are present for you at this moment? And it's helpful to actually label the emotion. So if it's restlessness, you would say restlessness. If it's boredom, say boredom. It's also helpful to say sadness is here, or anxiety, or uncertainty, perhaps. So whatever is in your awareness, to label that emotion. And now I'm going to ask you to go into your body. What are the body sensations that are present in your awareness? And it may be helpful to do a quick body scan, noticing perhaps tingling in your fingers or moisture in the palm of your hands. But it could be something more intense, like butterflies in your tummy or tightness in your chest. or heaviness. And helpful if you can identify those body sensations that are present for you. So now that we've identified the thoughts that are here, the emotions, and the sensations in your body, step 2 of this practice is now really focusing and centering your attention into the breath, the sensations of breathing, and ask you as best as you can to follow the full inhalation, perhaps a pause, and the full exhalation. Another pause. Staying with your breath as best as you can. Moving into your body as you feel the breath as body sensations. The rib cage expanding and deflating. The belly rising and falling. The air moving into your nostril and out of your nostrils. Perhaps even a tickling in your throat with the sound of the breath. And staying with the breath, the in-breath and the out-breath. And now with an exhalation, I'm going to ask you to move the awareness of the breath to the background, and in the foreground to do a full awareness of the entire body. An open awareness of everything in your experience, inside the body and outside the body. Becoming aware of the body in space, becoming aware of all your sensations and all your experiences. What we call an open awareness to whatever is arising. And as we leave this practice formally and come back to the room, I'm going to explain what we just did in a little bit more detail. So the practice we did is called the 3-minute breathing space. And the way I visualize it is like an hourglass where it's larger at the top. So this is your current experience, step 1, which includes your thinking, your emotions, your body sensations. So this is step 1. And then with the hourglass, we go narrower in the middle. And this is where we really intentionally bring our focus to the breath, and we stay intentionally with the breath. So this is really narrowing and focusing our attention on the hourglass. And then the third step is opening up the bottom of the hourglass to an open awareness. So that's how I visualize it. It's the hourglass. Open, what's present in my experience right now, intentionally bringing the focus to the breath, and then opening our awareness to the whole experience. So why this practice? So what I'm going to explain is when we're in automatic pilot and we get a trigger, something's happening, our child is screaming, or we missed a deadline on a report, or we're stuck in traffic, what happens is we go into automated pilot and we respond. And usually that happens quite quickly. Okay, and the way we respond and our behavior and how we respond is typically ingrained in us through many, many years of practice. How we cope in the past. We could respond by distracting ourselves. For example, if you had a deadline at work and your response could be, oh my goodness, I don't want to get to that. I think I'll distract myself and turn on Netflix and watch a couple hours of Netflix. So this is called distraction. We're avoiding what's in our awareness, right? So with this 3-minute practice, what I'm teaching you is to become aware of what's happening in your experience right now. Your thinking mind might say, oh my God, I need to get to that assignment. I need to do it. My boss will be angry if I don't put enough attention to it. And then you get tight, and then you're feeling anxious, and then you get distracted. Okay, so I want you to label all of that. And then what we're doing is we're actually pausing. We're pausing in the moment and we're coming to the breath. And this is where the mindfulness practices are really, really so important with working with our mental states. So we're coming now, pausing into this moment, into the breath. And sometimes I actually use the visual of my hands out like this. I'll show it online. So a lot of times our thinking is based in the past. So I'll use my left hand in the past with guilt or shame, or it could be in the future with anxiety or concern or worry of what's going to happen. And what I'm going to ask you to do is we're going to come together. This is where my hands are coming together in the present moment with the breath. So all we really have is now in this moment. So once we pause and come to this moment, then with the third step, I'm asking you to open up. Now that you've paused and come out of your automated response, which is run to Netflix, turn on the TV, or having a bowl full of popcorn, is now you're stopping and you're going to respond with an open awareness of, okay, this has been really difficult. I'm not motivated. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tackle the first 2 things on my to-do list. And then I'm going to take a break and go for a walk. So the pause and the open awareness allows us to step out of automated pilot and actually respond now in a wise way. And so this is why I call it the 3-minute breathing space, is we got to recognize what's showing up for us right now, move into the present moment with our breath, and then opening up to what really is a wise response now, instead of, your typical behavior or reaction. And so the course, what we're doing in the course is we're actually moving from different mindfulness practices, from a breath practice to a body scan. So we really get to learn about the sensations in our body. You may be aware that with depression, a lot of times my clients are living from the neck up. So it's all about their thoughts and their worries and their concerns. and they will have no feelings in their body at all. So we really need to spend time, really devoted time on recognizing sensations in our body. I actually have, and this is also not going to be very clear on the screen, but I have a really great visual of how the body has different sensations based on our emotions. So maybe I'll pass this around, and maybe those on screen can see it. But if we don't understand what the body is telling us as a tool, the sensations, how are we going to learn to recognize, to respond in a healthy, wise way? Okay, so when you're feeling tight and anxious in your stomach and your chest is becoming really tight, what is your body telling you? This is what I'm going to be teaching you in the class, is let's stop and really observe the body and say, yeah, you know what? Anxiety is here. I am not anxiety. I am not anxious, but anxiety is here. And recognizing that and letting it be here so that I can respond in a healthy way. So I'm actually going to tell you a personal example, because I think this might be helpful as I go through how this program will help you. So I have a grown son who's 20 years old. He's at university, and our relationship, just be personal here, our relationship is not all that solid. He's doing his thing, and it's very hard for me to try to connect with him at this moment. So I'll just be honest there. And so he was home last summer, and we had a bit of a disagreement, I would say. And when the conversation was going on, I immediately felt this tightness in my stomach. It was like, oh my God, like I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm very anxious. And all I wanted was to connect with my son. I just wanted to give him a big hug and connect with him and support him. But my initial reaction was to leave the room. So this is my own behavior. The way I cope with stress and conflict is I flee. So my reaction was to leave the room because I wasn't able to properly cope with it. But in this instance, what I did was I became aware of that tightness in my tummy, and I actually did a couple deep breaths, and I was able to stay with him, and I just listened. And that's all he needed. But in the past, I would have ran. And so we all have different behaviors, right? And so how did I do this? How did I recognize this? I first recognized in my body first. I recognized in my body first that anxiety was here. And then I noticed in my thinking that, oh my God, we're having another fight. Like we always fight, right? There's always conflict. And then my emotion was, disappointment, sadness, anxiety. If I let it continue, there probably would have been anger, to be honest. But then I used the 3-minute practice to identify those different parcels of my behavior, my awareness, came to the breath, which is where the mindfulness training helps us to center us in the present moment. And then using that awareness, I was able to step out of my automated pilot, which was to flee, and to actually just be present. Because that was probably the wisest choice that I had, was just to be present and to be with him. So what I'm teaching you in this class is to move out of those triggers. The trigger will come, not to move out of the trigger, but to recognize the trigger and to recognize what your traditional behaviors will be, your responses, using our mindfulness practice to identify the emotions, the body sensations, the thinking patterns, and then what our typical responses or behaviors are, to respond in a more wise and gentle way. Gentle for yourself and gentle for whoever's in your experience. So I'll say the first half of the 8-week program is we're working on our mindfulness practices. We're working on the body scan, so how we can really identify sensations in our body. We're working on mindful movement, so our body in motion, recognizing how we become aware of the body in motion. We've become aware of a meditation of the awareness of breath and body. And then what we do as more of an advanced practice, which is later on in the weeks, we start introducing a challenging event. So we introduce a challenging event, and what we do is we're building tolerance for when this challenging event may happen in the future. So for me, it might be, okay, I'm going to work with a situation where there may be conflict with my son, and I'm going to use this in my meditation practice, and we go through that together. So that in the future, when a challenging event or a trigger is presented, we have built tolerance to how we can respond in a more healthy way. So later on in the 8-week program, we start working with bringing in the cognitive behavioral real life situations, like my personal situation. We start bringing those into play so we can use our mindfulness training and awareness of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, to show up in life in a more healthy, wise manner. So what else can I tell you about the program? The program is 8 weeks. It's group program. It's not, as Alan had mentioned earlier, it's not group therapy. So I want to stress that, because we're not going into your personal stories in the past. We're actually spending time on what's showing up for you in this meditation practice or in this session. Okay, so we're staying very present with our experience and our sharing. So that's really important to know. It's very important to know that these sessions are experiential. So we're actually doing the practices together, the strategies together. So like the person walking across the street or the 3-minute breath practice, I'm doing them with you. And then we're sharing afterwards to say, you know, what showed up and how can we use this practically in our life? Okay, and then the other thing I think is really important to mention is that each week builds on the next week. So the first week we actually learn about, okay, what is mindfulness? How can we bring in all 5 senses to our experience? And I actually teach that there's 6 senses, and the 6th one is our mental phenomenal of our thinking mind. That's actually another, what I would consider a sense. Then we work on, you know, how can we recognize sensations in our body? And we build, each week, we build on each other. I do need to stress that this 8-week program is a huge commitment. I'm giving you probably between 45 minutes to 60 minutes of home practice a day that you will be working on daily. And the reason why this is so important is it's much like hiring a personal trainer at the gym, right? So you go to the gym once a week and you follow your personal trainer around, show you how to do the exercises. And then say the whole week you don't do any of your exercises. Then you go back a week later, do the same thing with your personal trainer and go back the week later, but you're not noticing any change to your body. It's much like that. If you want to get the most success out of the program, you need to do the home practices, and that's the meditation practices daily. You need to do them daily. And I consider myself a personal trainer for your mind. So if you can commit to the program then and your daily home practices, you will see a change in how you relate to your experience at the end of the 8 weeks. And the beauty of it, when you think about it, 8 weeks is, 2 months. You're basically, by engaging in this program, you basically have now created a new habit. You have now created a meditation practice after the 8 weeks, which is lovely because we become accountable for each other by doing the program. So how are we doing? We're at 8. Is there a wait list for the program? Yeah, so what I'll do is...
Can we hold on a moment and have a pause here, Pam? Just to, let's drop in again. And noticing any enthusiasm in the body, in the thinking, in the mind, excitement in this moment, questions coming up for you. There is something in the chat room. And just again and again, as Pam beautifully outlined, her hands being out, our mind going all over the place, how might this apply to me, and so forth. And just in that moment of noticing all the energy, just to come back and bring those beautiful hands together again, just to slow things down a little bit. And the reason that we have a full half an hour here for conversation, questions, comments is because this is a really, really important piece of the evening. That Pam's given a beautiful summary of MBCT. I may add a comment or two here just to let people know, in case they don't know, I'm a therapist myself. I'm a psychiatrist. I've done MBSR, I've done some MBCT as well. And just the reminder that the power of mindfulness and is that when this book was published, it was a great milestone because they looked at a group of people who'd had 3 or more episodes of depression. And in cognitive therapy, the traditional cognitive therapy, what you do is you go into the content of all the thoughts. You examine it, you rationalize it, you look for evidence. Why didn't my friend wave at me? Is that really true? Is it really true you hurt their feelings? Not to take it personal, all of that stuff. You go down a whole rabbit hole to try and untie all the thoughts. And they teach people that in cognitive therapy. And then mindfulness comes along and says, you know what? With attention, I don't even need to go down that rabbit hole. You don't even need to go down the rabbit hole. You can kind of catch it early and go, you know what? That worry that Pam spoke about, the rumination, you don't even need to go there again. You can just go, I've listened to that rumination 453 times. I don't even want to go there again. And what mindfulness does is, as Pam said, you're able to watch beautifully your pattern and go, I'm not going down that rabbit hole, it's exhausting. Now, you can't always do that if it's intense, but if you go down the rabbit hole, you know how to unpack all those distortions, the cognitive distortions, taking it personally, or all or nothing thinking, or blaming yourself, or that person's angry, all those stories. You don't even need to go there. So the beauty of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy is you can catch it early enough that you don't even need to go there anymore. Because you've been there 453 times and ruminated And the 454th time you go over the story, it ain't going to change. So you recognize it. Have I summarized that, Pam?
That's awesome.
Yeah, and you don't even need to go there, and that's the beauty of it. One other comment about, to add to what Pam said so beautifully, with that hourglass practice, what happens is we're aware of everything. There's my friend across the road. We're aware of the emotions that you identified. We're aware of the thoughts, and we can get into the stories. And what happens at that practice, coming to the breath, shifts your attention away from your emotions and your thinking. You bring it to something non-conceptual, like the breath. Oh, so the hourglass, my mind's going ba, 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 and the distraction and the speeding up. And you just go, no thanks. You come to the breath, and the body knows how to calm down. And as Pam says, when we're not above the neck, as you said, the depression is all up here. We do this drop in, come to the breath. Your attention is away from feeding the fuel of the story and the emotions. You're on the breath, and the body goes, I don't need to carry that story and ruminate again. And that's how it works. And then in that space of quietness, if I heard you correctly, in that space of quietness, now what's called for? Wisdom, non-reactivity, compassion, patience. Let me just listen to my son, as Pam said. I'm thinking of an unpleasant altercation I had a couple of months ago with someone, and I probably could have handled it a bit better, but the person was actually crossing a boundary with me that they'd crossed before, and it was inappropriate. And I said, this conversation's over, because I've been in that situation 5 times. So it's not that you have to stay there and take it if it actually crosses a line and it's actually abusive. And so I ended the conversation, but it was with wisdom and saying, I'm not putting up with this anymore. I said, this conversation's over. So this isn't to say you just sit there and take it. I don't think it's really, really important. That mindfulness isn't about being passive in any way, but it's coming into that beautiful grounded space you spoke about, Pam, and then acting with wisdom, whatever's called for in that moment. So Pam, we've got a couple of questions. Is there a wait list for the program?
Okay. So a couple things as I speak about the program. We alluded to at the beginning of the session that Alberta Health Services has endorsed this program for all Albertans, subject to a screening process and an intake. Unfortunately, our contract with Alberta Health Services is coming to an end, the end of May, and I strongly believe it's because of the Alberta elections that are coming that their contract hasn't been renewed. So I think what's going to happen is once the elections happen, then we're going to advocate to continue the program again. But the beauty of the program is it came out about 3 years ago, and it was available to all Albertans who wanted to gain some awareness on the practice of mindfulness and working with their own stressors and challenges with COVID. And so whether it was loneliness or grief or unable to socialize or whatever, the government was sponsoring the program. It was online. Now, because we're moving away from that, I am doing the mindfulness based cognitive therapy in 2 sort of venues. One, in my private practice, I do it online. So we do an 8-week online practice, and I'll be starting a new program for May and June. Secondly, and I think you be aware of this, is there is an in-person program that's starting in a week, I think, and that is through Yoga MCC at Martelou. I'm teaching there a mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, and as far as I know, there's still room available if you want to do that. The cost, I think people will probably want to know about the cost. The cost is $650 to take the 8-week program. Now, What I have noticed is because I'm a Canadian certified counselor, some benefit programs are recognizing this program under their mental health coverage plan. So people are getting reimbursed for the $650. I know various large organizations in downtown Calgary that are supporting this program. So you would have to check with your insurance whether or not this program is covered. I have come across a lot of insurance companies that are covering it. But just so you know the cost, you have to pay the fee up front because insurance companies are not covering it unless you attend the class, which makes sense, right? You can't get reimbursement for a chiropractor appointment if you're not going to go to the appointment. So at the end of the 8-week class, I send a receipt to the insurance companies of all of your attendance, and then they reimburse you. So I just wanted to let you know that that's a possibility. The online programs that I'm doing through my personal practice is discounted for anyone. I'm discounting for anyone that's part of this session tonight with $100 discount, so it's $550. So if you want to do that, then that's available to you. Someone asked, what is the group size? So the maximum I will take is 14 as a group, and the minimum is 8. So the reason being is there is great awareness that comes out of group sharing. We learn from each other, but we don't want it so big that it gets overwhelming. So the group size varies from 8 to 14.
Thank you, Pam.
Any questions?
Anyone live? Yeah. Anyone in the room here at Shaganappi have any comments
Are they still
or
live?
questions?
8 weeks, and then how much commitment per day was it? I missed that. I didn't give you
1
price.
hour.
1 hour a day.
1 hour of practice a day.
And,
Yeah.
and the, where you do that on your own, and then your course, or whatever, online with you for an hour a day or something.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, the actual 8-week, the sessions are 2.5 hours weekly for 8 weeks.
Oh, every week too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a commitment. And there's so much to gain from it. What I've done and what I found has been helpful for my students is I've put together all the resources, all the meditation audio recordings, all the videos online in a portal on my website. So you can gather all the resources and download all the audio recordings from the website. So what you do is you download them, and then during your week, when you're practicing, you listen to the audio, my voice, as the audio meditation. And you can use it when you're walking, or when you're lying down as doing a body scan, or when you're sitting, you listen to my voice. It's a guided meditation. And as the weeks progress, there's more and more silence.
Pam, you have to excuse my ignorance here.
Yes.
So we're talking about a combination of mindfulness and cognitive behavioral therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And as Alan has said, sort of as I understand it, the core of cognitive behavioral therapy is questions that challenge your automatic thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm terrible, I'm negative, I'm bad. Oh, but is that really true? So what I've heard from you this evening is mindfulness, but not cognitive therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So can you share with us, is there this questioning of our automatic thoughts as part of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy?
Yeah.
Because really, you've really addressed mindfulness of breath and body and awareness of thoughts and emotions. But there hasn't been that other aspect of how do we counter our negative thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So what I'll speak to that is the distortions of the cognitive distortions, which you're alluding to, the different types of distortions of our thinking pattern and how to question that. We glance over it. very, very slightly in the program. We're spending more time with the recognizing the thinking pattern as thinking versus diving into what the thoughts are. So when we say cognitive behavioral therapy, we're looking at the thoughts and what are our behaviors because of the thoughts. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm not good enough, I wish I would have done that better, what are your behaviors? So instead of diving into the actual thoughts, we're just saying thinking, and then we're looking at, how can we respond in a more wise way once we recognize, what's showing up with the thoughts, what's showing up in our emotions, what's showing up in the body sensations.
So there really isn't a lot of the cognitive behavioral therapy in terms of challenging our thoughts.
Not necessarily, no.
So I have one last question, if I might ask you. And this I find personally is the most difficult part of the theory, of the therapy. Our mind talks to us, and it says not nice things about who we are. The problem is, hey, it ain't an alien in my mind that's talking to me. It must be me. I am thinking, I am talking to myself. So how does awareness of breath and body allow you to step out of the ownership of the sense of self and the thinking mind, which I believe is the essence of freedom? So can you explain how just being aware of breath and body allows you to not identify with the sense of self?
Yeah, I really think the essence of this program is when we look at the thinking mind, we're removing ourselves, we're taking a distance, we're actually becoming more observers of our thoughts. So as the thoughts are coming up, and if I concentrate on depression, say, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, this always happens to me. What we're doing is we're actually become observer to the thought as the thought, and that we are not our thoughts. So we're trying to distance ourselves. And once we distance ourselves and recognize that it is just a mental phenomenon, like is what I would say another sense organ in our body, that we can detach ourselves from the thinking mind and then be able to recognize what we have is what's in our body and what is present in the here and now. And this is how we respond. So we are working quite diligently on how we distance ourselves from the thought patterns and how we become more observer of our thoughts. And you may have recognized when I said, I am depressed versus depression is here. And when we rephrase it to say depression is here, in a sense, we're actually moving out of the identification of I am depressed, right? Depression is I see that depression is here. For example, I'm feeling sadness, or I'm crying, or my body is feeling lethargic. Right? And that's why we need to tune into our body versus I am depressed. It's I am this whole environment, which is what we're learning to distance ourselves from. So I don't know if that's somewhat helpful.
Yeah, thank you. That's good.
And there's another trick there, Pam, about don't confuse a T with a T and don't confuse an F with an F. Don't confuse a thought with a truth. They can be separate. And don't confuse a feeling with a fact. That's another one. Because our thoughts and emotions are so intimate, I'm hearing you say, it's so easy to identify them because they're right here with us. And we feel it in the body and we go, oh, this is me. They're so close. And that capacity you speak of, if I'm rephrasing it correctly, is to watch that and just see, oh, he has a thought, he has a feeling. And that capacity to sit back and watch. And that everything comes and goes. Everything comes and goes. And at the root of mindfulness is also part of the teaching, is that we are able to sit and just watch it. And after 10 seconds, you think about something else anyway. That's what the mind does. So you don't have to be so reactive. Just because it's showing up, you don't have to react to it. But because it's so intimate, we feel we have to run away from it, or freeze, or fight, or leave the room, all that. We have another question online. We have a few minutes left. Can you share your name again for your private practice? I can find it on the post. Pam Hauck, Pamhauck. Her name is Pam Hauck. I don't think you want my name.
So Pam,
Yeah.
do we have any other live or dead questions here?
Do you want to type that in? That's my website. Sorry.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to let at the beginning to start that.
Can you repeat the question again for the people online?
Yeah, would you mind?
Ellen, why don't you repeat it?
I'm typing in Pam's website in the chat
Did you
room.
hear that, Pam?
No, I missed the beginning.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ellen.
Why that happens, why we lose touch, just like numb. So we lose touch with the sensations
When we're triggered. I wonder if the medical doctors can explain this better than me.
Well, I have a thought about that, is that first of all, we're so focused on our thinking mind. It's so dominant that basically we live above the neck. But I think the other key point is it can be very difficult to approach your body. And the reason why is this. When we were very young, even before we had language skills, when we were faced with physical or psychological threats, our bodies immediately became primed. We were preparing for fight, flight, or freeze. So every thought and emotion will have some degree of physicality to it. The problem is that we don't metabolize, process, and release the trapped energy. And this is a very big problem with people who have a history of trauma. So whenever we, and I don't know about you, but I know that when I start to feel upset or anxious, and I feel this feeling in my gut, I sense it, but I immediately want to escape from it. I don't want to go there. It's not just the physicality, because really that physical fluttering in my belly, it really isn't that aversive. The problem is that when I go to the body, in some way I am triggering the memory of my historic trauma. So why go there? And so that, I think, is as I understand it, is a reason why we are aversive to going to our bodies. And so it's a great practice going to your body, but often when you do, there is an associated fear that keeps you from inhabiting it.
I have a comment here as well. In fact, a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, I gave a presentation here one evening about mindfulness is not a substitute for therapy. It's really, really important. It can be an important adjunct. And going into the body, the breath, as we've done here this evening, for someone who's had significant trauma, that can be a very, very triggering experience. In fact, the last 10, 15 years has come up about trauma-based therapy, that the way that it's done is very, very gently, and it's with people who are trained to gently go through the body, and very, very gently. And there's a somatic experiencing therapists around these days where you actually bypass all the cognition, because there's so much fight or flight or freeze and stories around it that it's a specialized kind of therapy. So if there's significant trauma, just a heads up, mindfulness can actually trigger a tremendous amount and make things worse. So you've heard that it helps you drop in and the hourglass and you come to your breath. No. For some people, it's actually very triggering. So please don't substitute mindfulness for therapy. It's important. And I think that's become a bit confused now, because as Pam spent the evening talking about mindfulness-based therapy, people are going, great, I don't need to go through my trauma. I can just meditate my way out of it. No. You can. So please, a bit of a warning, just to be careful. It's a wonderful adjunct. It's been incorporated into therapies, as Pam has eloquently explained. Just a bit of a heads up there. Any other comments from folks in the room? Folks online, we've got 3-4 minutes left.
So Pam, in the acute, this one last question for what people can take away. I'm in an argument with my 20-year-old son. I don't have 3 minutes to do a 3-minute meditation practice. In that moment of anger, what would you suggest that people go away with? How can I use MBCT to deal with that acute energy in that moment?
Yeah, I think what we're teaching is bring awareness to the sensations in the body. And that's the first thing that you'll notice. Your body is an amazing tool. Like it knows when it needs to protect you and make you safe, right? And that's what it's before you even do. So what I would like to leave you with is I'm teaching you how to recognize what's happening in your body. So your body teaches you how to respond in a wise way. So that example with my son is I wouldn't have been able to pause and use the breath if I didn't notice it in my body first. So for me, I noticed my body was tight. Like even coming in today, like I was feeling a little bit sweaty, so you're nervous, your body's telling you that, right? And so that's when you say, okay, I need to just take a breath. And the breath is our tool to come to the present moment. And once we get out of that reactivation stage, that's when we can respond, as you mentioned, with kindness or compassion or with wisdom.
Pam, we've got a beautiful comment from someone online. Thank you so much for another excellent session. Loved every bit of it. Thank you for reminding everyone that people who have a history of trauma need extra TLC. And really mindfulness, a lot of people think of it, it's a technique, it's a strategy. And seeing the TLC here reminds us that mindfulness and coming into the moment brings us into a space where TLC, tender loving care, or compassion, or patience, or love, or forgiveness, whatever's called for in the moment, it creates that beautiful soil. Mindfulness is the doorway that helps us regulate, become grounded, settled, as you spoke about, and then the wisdom to act more ethically, to act more wisely, to think more wisely, to have a more helpful, life-affirming, joyous, beautiful response. So mindfulness is both a process and it's also a content in a way. Another one, again, to you, thank you very much, Pam. Very interesting, informative, and new to me information. Pam, I'll take this opportunity to be respectful of everyone's time to thank you very, very much for your wisdom, your experience, to combine this wonderful Western traditions, Eastern traditions, contemplative traditions, to bring ourselves, come back to the body all the time, breath and body, we've all got one. We've got the wisdom. When we create the conditions with intention, the body knows how to calm us down. We don't have to react, and we can move forward in beautiful, life-affirming ways. So thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the participants this evening. We've got 17 folks online. We've got 6, 8, 9. We've got 28 people attending this evening. That's great. Thank you all very much. Just a reminder for little donations if possible. Every bit counts. It adds up really quickly. over the course of the year, for those of you who are regulars, you keep coming back, it's because we have many, many different kinds of speakers all the time. And they all come back to using this mindfulness, and it's all part of different healing processes. So whether it's MBCT, we've had Reiki, we've had people who talk about spiritual paths, we've had pastors, we've had rabbis, we've had breathwork people, we've got gastroenterologists, and Phil Bluestein's book online, thebreathproject.org. Phil Bluestein he wrote a book called Mindfulness Medication, and it's online, free PDF. If you want a real copy, for those of you in the hall, it's available at the back. And thank you very much. I'll let the people online go.
Your session.
Oh, my session. In 2 weeks' time, I happen to be moderating this evening. My session in 2 weeks' time, I can't remember. I think it's called Mindful Listening.
Pay for it.
Mindful listening, listening to the silence of the heart. And this is actually a good follow-up for where Pam has really set a beautiful stage here this evening, for when we drop in, not only to the breath, but we can come into looking at our thoughts and our feelings, the person across the road, why this and that, but actually tapping into another asset called our heart. And the heart is, as Phil said, where the wounding happens, where we carry it. And we don't want to go there because it hurts. But the heart is also the place of healing, the heart of the matter. Love, the heart is the symbol for love, and so forth. So mindfulness is actually about leaning into the painful places, looking at it, and then actually finding in the wound is the healing. No healing, no wound. I'm sorry, other way around. No wound, no healing. So the wounds are where the healing needs to happen, and the heart happens to be a very, very important asset we all have. So there'll be in 2 weeks' time a drop-in, a meditation, and then I'll talk a little more. Again, we do the experience first, as Pam did tonight, and then we'll talk afterwards and Q&A.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.